Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For some of you, peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Y'all know I'm actually not going to follow up on FBA to FBAA here on YouTube. That's only going to be on Buy Me a Coffee. And I got good reasons for why I say that, but I'm not going to say them for free. I gave my first one here on YouTube, and that's fine. Part 2 is already there. You can subscribe for $5 a month or $10 a month, and you can get it. Both the business and the first class flyers have access to that. Now, if you only support by making a one-time donation, then it won't open that up for you. But so, like, if you just donate once, if you said you were going to be a supporter by donating once, then it won't open that up. But most supporters are also subscribers. And I want to give a shout out to you all for doing that. And also, before I'm done talking dollars and cents, because this is really about something else, I want to give a shout out to M. Raymond for coming through on the Cash App from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. I've been mentioning this, and to be honest with you, very few people have actually taken heed, because the few that have taken heed are sending in amounts that will cover several people. And I've asked that if you hear this and it benefits you, that you just send in $1 or $2 a piece. And I mean, that wouldn't be an amount equal to my subscriber count every month, because for the videos, what really happens is that, for the videos, it's, let's say, between 300 to 500 that see and hear each upload of mine. And people aren't going to make more than one a month, and they should not. And so I'd be looking at a few hundred a month at the most. I mean, I'd be looking at 200 a month if I'm lucky, really. And that's not, that doesn't break anybody if it's from several people sending in one or two. But I want to give a shout out to those who do support from the bottom of my black heart and from the depths of my black mind. You're going to hear some noise as I move around because I'm getting ready to go to work. My people, listen, this one is more so about something that I talked about in the upload before, which is her inequality of accountability. I'm going to point out what it was like before women could drive. And since women have been able to drive now for almost 7 years, we're a few months shy of 7 years since they've been able to drive, I can now tell you guys what it's felt like to them for the most part, because they themselves have talked about some of the changes. Accidents have not necessarily gone up. What has happened is that men are driving more carefully. And see, a lot of men said, well, I am afraid if they let women drive, because then guys will bump the cars so that they have an excuse to talk to these women. I don't want somebody doing that to my mom or to my sisters. So that's how a lot of these guys work. That's how in other words, men trusted other men less than what was warranted. And I understand that most men know that most men aren't out here trying to flirt illicitly. What it is that most men also know that the few who do this are really out there bad. So in this country, you got a few harassers, and most women that have ever been harassed, if they could bring all their harassers up, would be harassed by the same few men, much like guys that violate in the West. But there's still in every city, and I think a lot of guys forgot something, and that is that even harassers aren't willing to get dents and dings on their car every time they want to harass a woman, or every time they want to have a reason to speak so as to flirt. They're not doing that. I mean, if you're just going to sit up and try to play the numbers game to get a bunch of phone numbers of chicks, what you're going to do then is you're going to try to find somewhere that's not going to damage a car in the process, because in all honesty, a car, come on now. A car is not free. You don't go and get a car just so you can keep on getting dings and dents in it because you nudged a woman's car. But what's happened is that more women have had accidents. It's not because they're dumb. They're new drivers. And as you guys know, the experience and the skills that you have after driving for 7 years is nothing like what you have after driving for 17 years. And then for 20 years. And then the experience and the skill that you have after you've been driving for 27 years and then 30. And I've been driving I've been driving now for more than 30 years. It's darn near second nature to me. But I don't like it. I dislike driving. And I told my wife, don't sit up here and start coming up with all these errands that we have to run just because I'm the one doing the driving. I'll drive, but I don't like it. So the way that you plan your own errands is the way you start coming up with errands for us to run. Because when we run an errand, I'm driving. And I don't like it. And I even said to her, because she's going to catch a plane out of here to go to a bigger city, to go out of the country for her relative's wedding. And I said that, well, that's fine and it's dandy. She's coming here today. I even told her, when you get here, you got time between you getting here and then us having to go to the airport. So here's where we will not eat, because I'm not going to run that risk. We're not going to eat on the side of the town that is the opposite side from the airport, because then a traffic jam will develop and you're still going to want me to drive. But when I'm sitting there cussing people out and cussing their mamas out too for making them, because all of them are in front of us on the road going the same direction, you're going to tell me calm down, and then I'm going to turn around and cuss you out. Because I think ahead to avoid these things and you don't. Well, I didn't say I'd cuss you out, but I told I'd turn around and raise my voice at you or put you in the driver's seat. No, I'm not driving if you're there. Exactly. See? So since I have to drive, I'm setting the destination as to where we go, because I know where not to go to get us stuck on the highway and then have me a raging animal by the time we get to the airport, whether you catch or miss your flight. You need to learn some patience. I know how to be patient by avoiding the situations in which patience becomes a liability. See, this is where we are different. I think ahead. Even when she's around, she thinks ahead on the condition that I'm absent. And she's not the first one. A lot of women do that. I tell you, good women will have some of these habits. So you have to think ahead. You have to plan ahead because of some of the bad habits that they're going to have, only because they just were never told the importance of maintaining the good ones. And so with that being said, what it was like for women here a few years ago, really, before they could drive, was, in some ways, it still is like this for them. Women had drivers, and they had the numbers of taxi drivers they could call. And so they could call their drivers, they could call taxi drivers, they called their brothers, their dads, but they were calling somebody to do the driving for them. And women did not really have to focus on the road. And one of the other things that happened was that a Somali man told me that Saudi women in general did not appreciate when their husbands would drive non-aggressively. These women would forget that they were passengers in the car, and that the husband driving carefully was better for them and for the kids. They would forget this. Why didn't you cut in front of him? Why did you let them go in front of you? And this was common for them. And when I realized this, I said, hold up. What the F, man? Is this what the hell we doing? When I found this out, this was actually, I think this was right before they were able to drive that he told me about this. And so upon learning this, I pretty much said, okay, well, see, this is what I'm not going to be doing. I'm not letting them talk about driving while I got to drive. Many things were very convenient for them. And I realized that one of the things to which this led was that when their drivers were stuck in these traffic jams that could last and however long they were going to last, because nobody cares to be faster, um, then they could get more done, like studying, working. Just they had more free time just by virtue of the fact that they didn't have to keep their eyes on the road. They were in constant communication with whoever they needed to communicate with to get anything done. Meanwhile, men would lose large chunks of our days to commutes and traffic jams. And we simply did not, I'll tell you straight away, as an educator, I did not have much sympathy for the excuses of my students because I knew that my students were always full of excuses when they weren't true. So my students always had a reason why they were late and why they were behind on their work, late getting in, interrupting class because they were late. I knew why. And I just didn't care. Reason was because I knew that if they planned ahead of time, it would have been better. I was not aware as to how insensitive their sisters were. I didn't realize that their sisters were, when their sisters really were calling and saying, my class let out early, come take me home. I didn't realize that this actually was happening. I thought they were making this up as an excuse. But they really were, they were really out there getting phone calls and their sisters were saying, my class let out, take me home early. And I'm like, okay, I always hear this. Looking back, I think that about half the time it was true and the other half the time it wasn't. As a matter of fact, I can tell when students started to lie and when they would tell the truth. If in the beginning of a semester, I let a student go because because his sister got out of class early, then all the other students would use it as an excuse when it wasn't true, so they were lying. But if I did not accept that, then the other students that came up and told me that were telling the truth. But what I did do was somewhere in the middle. I said, well, listen, you can go and take her, but you're absent. I don't have a choice. No, doctor, please, fuck the shuck up. This is class time. You're taking it away from them because you want to sit up here with this Bedouin BS. Nigga, make up your mind. You stay and you're present, or you go take her home early, but you're absent. Don't discuss this with me. Pick one, choose one. If you leave, I mark you absent. It's not personal. If you stay, you are present. Now close your mouth and make a decision and carry it out. I got to get back to this English lesson because not one of you has English good enough to justify being in my class from the first, let alone passing it in the end. I had to be a jerk with him. And as time went on, the more time went on, the worse I had to be because the more excuses these ninjas gave. But these women were I see why one of the reasons why these women got ahead. One of the reasons they got this culture of getting ahead is that now when they can drive, they choose when they drive and where they drive and how they drive. Now they get a choice. If they don't want to drive, they don't. If they don't mind it, they do. So they actually have a lot less stress on them when it comes to driving, whereas men have to drive when it's stressful, where it's stressful, and how it's stressful. And if a woman's in the car, it's even worse. Because these women will be sitting in the car unbuckled, no seatbelt. Why did you let him go first? Like, what does it matter to you anyway? All I did was play it safer with you in the car as a passenger. Like, it's bad for us. When people start talking about, well, you live in a country where they abuse women. No. The worst that a man, even when fathers make their daughters marry men that the women don't like, that's oppression, but the dads aren't doing it out of hatred. There are dads who do that, and they'll pay dearly if they get taken to court for it. Now, if there were really no good dads, the girl doesn't mind taking dad to court because he was a crap dad. And she'll be like, yes, I'm putting you in court. You're going to pay me these damages. You're going to pay him the dowry back because I'm leaving the man. And it's your fault because you forced me to marry him. And you were a crap dad anyway. You pretty much sold me to the guy. So, yeah, that makes you a crap dad. I'm taking you to court. Screw family loyalty, all that other stuff. Pay up. Now the judge is going to have to look at the evidence and say, damn, you know what? I've got the husband's bank statement. He made a deposit. I got the dad's bank statement. He made this withdrawal. And there is a marriage contract between you and this husband. So it does appear that you were sold. So your dad's going to have to pay the dowry back, or you're going to have to pay it back, and you can leave the man. But the marriage is now null and void because you were forced. So these women do actually have protections. There aren't systemic human rights abuses, or even just sitting up and looking away from and turning the other way and looking like they didn't happen or acting like they didn't happen. Now, proof is necessary. There are times when it cannot be proven, but the system doesn't just say, you know what, they're women, so what? They don't do that. The system's upheld by men. These men have sisters and they got mothers. And they're going to have wives. They don't want wives that hate them. They don't want their sisters to hate their husbands. And they don't want the husbands of their sisters to hate the sisters. And they don't want their daughters to have to suffer. So they understand this. They know that a wife was somebody's daughter before she was the wife. Then she becomes a mother, hopefully in that order. They know this. All this talk about how they're just abused and trampled on is not even true. And women have had more time to get more stuff accomplished too. They get to accomplish more because they're allowed to. They don't have to drive if they don't want to. If they get in a car and they see that there is a traffic jam, they can go back, park that car, walk back in the house in the women's side of it like they never left, go into the main parts of the house and say to their brother or their dad, can you take me here? Meanwhile, the only reason she ain't driving herself is because there's traffic. And she wants to text somebody. And then look up from her phone and be where she wanted to go in the first place. That's the only reason. Meanwhile, you as a guy, you could be sitting up resting and relaxing. You about to doze off, go to sleep, and then knock on your door, and she just walks in like, hey, I need you to take, damn. So you and I think, oh, they got it bad. And frankly, I'm to the point now where I don't want to hear this crap anymore because I know it's a mother cuss word lie. And I know that some people, when they say that they lived here, that they know they're lying. Now, there are people who don't know that they're lying. They get it wrong and they don't realize that it's a lie, but it's a lie. And then there are other people in this cuss word that, they're over there with you and they've never been over here. And they, they don't know they're lying. They're not really lying. They just don't know what the truth is. So they're just saying what they've heard and they really think so. There are some jobs that women here are not allowed to have. And it doesn't bother me in the least bit that they're not allowed to have these jobs. Because only a few. Judges, they can't be king. See, what's the rest? What's the other? I can't remember the others. The lawyers now. And you know what? They do these jobs well. And one of the reasons they can do these jobs well is because they don't have to drive. They're not considered to be responsible for taking care of men unless it's a son of theirs and the dad is dead. That's the only way. And even then, when that son starts to get a little mustache, they start putting weight on the son's shoulders. Maybe they got a younger brother and the dad is dead and the mom is gone. And even then, they early on start putting weight on that son. On that younger brother. He could be crippled. He could be sick. This guy harassing me. I need you to go and fight him. Dang. Really? Dude could have one hip. Now, I'm exaggerating a little bit. They don't dehumanize the men here. But I do want you to understand that there's not some situation here where the men are dehumanizing the women either. They're not seen that way. These men just don't simply tolerate loose sexual behavior from these women, even if it is promised to them. They don't really tolerate that because they understand that later on, she's going to be looking for a husband. And they don't want that. And I don't blame them for that. No, don't go looking for a husband now. You were looking for a ding-a-ling earlier. You don't get to go look for a husband now. Worse yet, they'll be waiting on a husband to come looking for them. No, why should he come looking for you now? You were out there just giving it up. You were having a grand old time doing it too. Just once you could get away unsupervised, booty clapping sounds, as Duke Jackson would say. And now you sitting up expecting a man to come looking for you. Well, that might happen because he doesn't know what your past was like. But then you know what? Yeah, these men would turn around and say, hey, look. And these men were right for doing it. These men would turn around later on and they would say, if they find out that she's not a virgin, they would say, listen, mom, dad, I need to break some news to y'all. She ain't no virgin. What we doing here? I mean, am I supposed to pay a dowry and she ain't no virgin? What's happening with that? What's with this? What gives? Am I just worthless? I'm supposed to wait till marriage, but she gets to run wild and I got to pay a dowry for this? What's wrong with y'all? And they're going to look and say, wait a minute, hold up. Now, we love our daughter and all that, but you mean to tell us that somebody got up in them guts before you did, but you her first husband? Yeah. Oh. So you don't need me to tell you why that sort of thing would be unfair to the man if the man is not running around here fornicating. Because in all honesty, I have seen with my own eyes how women treat men when the woman has fornicated and she realizes the man has not. There could be a case where they're both experienced. It's just that she fornicated and he didn't. She'll look at him like, ew. I don't think I want him. And sometimes these could be otherwise, high character ladies and women, but that's one thing that's going to run through their mind. Like, why is he inexperienced compared to me? So what I'm saying to you all is that, here in this Gulf nation, and there's another thing. They don't mind sitting up and saying, Assalamu alaikum, sir. They don't mind sitting up and saying, so make a long story short. They'll sit up and say on their wedding day that they like someone else. I mean, they say this on the women's side of the parties. Husband don't find out. They're careful not to say that. They just let y'all know that they'll say stuff like that. And this is something they say to each other, not to the men. I mean, I don't even want the men to think or to know that they even think like this, but men who know. Men who, when I say men who know, I mean men who've ever heard the leaks know, or men who've happened to hear their sister talking to another lady for whatever reason, talking to one of her friends. They know certain things about this. They may not know who's who, but they know this exists. And then there are men, younger guys usually, that don't really even know this exists, especially if they don't have any sisters. And quiet as it's kept, one thing a lot of people here do know is that a lot of women here want to marry a man that doesn't have sisters. And they'll say, well, she's going to call him, utilize his time and resources, and that is a reason, but that's not the only reason. They also want a man that didn't have a lot of sisters because, you know what? If he doesn't have a lot of sisters, that means that he doesn't have a lot of insight. And that makes a big difference to them. And this is some stuff that goes on here. Now, it's not to a dehumanizing level. It's not hateful, but it happens. And I just wanted you guys to know and understand that they're not being dehumanized here. Nobody's dehumanizing anybody. Not at all. All right, so sorry about that. I've been interrupted multiple times nonstop, but suffice it to say that there have been many who came here and they were less stressed out than they'd ever been back in the West. And the only thing that really bothered them would have been one thing they couldn't do. And to be honest, well, let's see. The lack of pork was one thing that got one really riled up. The lack of whiskey. But you know what? In all honesty, even if they wanted to wild out, there were some big cities to which they could go and do that. It would work. Because here, you got a lot of dudes that ain't going to fall for that. You got a lot of dudes that would say, no, I don't trust that. I don't believe that. It's not easy to lay down with a stranger. Even for dudes. Matter of fact, it's harder for dudes than it is for ladies because in the back of your mind, Your spider senses are saying, what if this is a robbery? What if this is a setup? And your junk still got to work. And they don't have to think like that. So it's actually easier for them to go through with something like that than it is for a lot of dudes. And so make a long story short, it's work. And some of them, I just realized as I was recording this, that some of them did not want to stay, because in order for them to catch a rod, if you will, still took some work. Might take some convincing on their part that it's not a setup. But it's been pretty low stress for a lot of them, in all honesty. It's been quite low stress. Many of them don't really want to go back to the West unless they just don't think that the people here are equal to the ones back in the West from which they came. Or they just miss alcohol or pork. Or being able to catch a rod without having to convince the guy. That's what that is. So, that being said, I hope this helps to dispel some of the misconceptions. Thanks for listening. As always, Black Heart, Black Mind, Black Out, Assalamu Alaikum, Black Heterosexual, Non-Select Male Power, because they don't like a Black Patriarchy till extinction of Judgment Day. Thank you for flying with us here on Jet Black Air, with a phrase Jet Black's also a verb. Keep jetting black with us till the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice forever.